Welcome back. You're watching World 360 with me, Akanksha Swaroop. Now, joining me on the show is Ruby Dhalla, who's the Indian origin MP in Canada and is aiming to now succeed Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau as the next Prime Minister of Canada. Many thanks to you, Ruby, for joining in. Now, what is Canada's need of the hour and how do you intend to address the most burgeoning concern of US tariffs, not to forget the rising cost of living in Canada?
I think the need of the hour in Canada is to start putting Canadians and Canada first. We are facing a multitude of challenges, not only here at home, but also with our neighbor down south, the United States of America. And that is why we are at a critical moment in our country's history. It is a moment in which we require strong leadership that is bold, leadership that is fearless, and the leadership that is going to provide real solutions and take real action on so many of the issues that Canadian families across the country are facing. And I think it is also incredibly important of someone who has the experience, has the leadership qualities, but also has a plan in place to ensure that we create not only an economy, but a country that is the best in the world.
Ruby, has Justin Trudeau failed to defend Canada in front of Donald Trump, who has passed remarks like Canada must become the 51st US state? Has Canada lost its world stature under Justin Trudeau?
I'm not going to comment on, Mr. Trudeau per se, but there are a number of challenges that are facing, our country. And as you have shared in the past, few days, Canada and the U.S. have been in the headlines because the President of the United States, Donald Trump, has wanted to impose tariffs, on Canada and Canadian products of 25%. And this has been unfortunate because the Canada and the U.S. have always been like a brother or sister or like a family that has operated. There are a multitude of states in the United States that only are dependent, on Canada and Canadian products, where we are the number one trading partner of almost 27 states. We are the number two trading partner of almost 11 states in the U.S. So there is a very significant, relation where almost $1 trillion of economy of goods are supplied back and forth between Canada and the U.S. The one thing that has happened, I can tell you, since Mr. Trump has wanted to impose these tariffs, is that Canada has really united and Canadians have united to ensure, that we move collectively with a very strong voice. And that voice is that Canada will never, ever be the 51st state. We are a sovereign country. We intend to protect our borders. We intend to ensure that we create a vibrant and a competitive economy. I have highlighted the importance and the necessity of actually creating, trading partnerships, economic relationships, strengthening our global alliances with other nations.
Fair enough. Ruby, you recently made headlines with a bold statement outlining your plan to deport illegal immigrants if elected, an issue that's also at the heart of your campaign. At a time, the Indian opposition MPs have already created an uproar regarding the use of a military aircraft by US and shackling of deportees. What are your thoughts, not to forget the fact that you also happen to be an immigrant from India?
Well, I'm not going to comment, on how the United States and Mr. Trump, chooses to govern his country and how he chooses, his policies and, his government stand on having those immigrants deported. I can only comment on the policy that I have put forward that I believe is a need of the hour for Canadians. First of all, I'm myself the daughter of immigrant parents. My mother came to our great country in 1972. I don't think she ever would have imagined one day that her daughter would be standing to become, prime minister. And like so many immigrants, I am one of the first women of color, the first, women from the immigrant communities to ever stand for leadership in the Liberal Party of Canada. So going back to, your question about the policy announcement that I made, it was not against immigrants. This is about people that have come into the country illegally or that are living in Canada illegally. And I also stated that those that are living here, those that have come here illegally, after they've gone through the due process After that process, if it has been deemed that they're still illegal, then yes, they do need to be deported, because there are a lot of immigrants, and the majority of people, that have come here legally. There's a family reunification route. There's the route or the process to come here through economic investment. We have a number of international students that have come here all legally. So why is it that anyone should enter the country illegally and then come here and stay? And the other fact that I've spoken out about is, human traffickers. We need to clamp down on those that are, human trafficking, people, especially so many women are impacted, so many immigrants are impacted, and it really destroys people's lives. And, I guess coming from an immigrant family, I am so in tune into the challenges and the struggles that people go through when they come to Canada. I want to ensure that we create an environment for everyone where they feel safe, where they feel protected. And if you're illegal, then you're going to get deported out.
Ruby, we've seen diplomatic ties reach an all-time low during Trudeau's tenure. Will you aim to restore the damaged ties between Ottawa and New Delhi, one that's been defined by people-to-people ties?
I 100% agree with you. One of our greatest strengths in our country is the fact that when you see Canada, you actually see the rest of the world, and you have the opportunity to have immigrants from all of the different countries throughout the world. And that's what makes Canada and our fabric, just such a beautiful place to live, because we are so enriched. But I do think, as I was sharing earlier, especially in light of, all of these threats that have come from down south about the taxation on tariffs, we as a country can never ever be hijacked or be held hostage by any one foreign leader when it comes to our economy. And that's why, going to your question, we need to ensure that we utilize the strengths, the experiences, the insights of our immigrant communities to create stronger relationships with other countries. And, the safety, the security, and the protection of Canadians will always be my first and foremost, priority as the leader of the Liberal Party and as Canada's next Prime Minister. However, I do believe that it is important that we start strengthening our trade relationships with countries, like India, like Saudi Arabia, like the UAE, like Australia, Ecuador, Japan. We need to diversify. So we need to utilize the strength that we have in our country to create stronger bonds with many of the other countries in the world, and India should be one of them.
I'm glad you also said India, because from penning a letter to Indira Gandhi to meeting Prime Minister Narendra Modi during one of your India visits, share with us your views on India and Prime Minister Modi as well, especially when we talk about your India Connect.
I remember, as a 10-year-old, of seeing all of these atrocities that were occurring in India against Sikhs, and being someone who is from a Sikh, faith. I remember I was deeply struck by all of this that I was seeing, of people getting killed and Sikhs getting attacked and families getting destroyed. So I turned to my mom and I said, I actually want to write a letter because this needs to stop. So I didn't even know who the Prime Minister was, but I penned this letter advocating for, for peace and in trying to, request that and demand actually that the violence against Sikhs stop. So I wrote this letter to her, and I remember on the letter that I wrote, I just wrote Prime Minister of India, New Delhi, India. And a few weeks later, my doorbell rang and I ran to the door and I got this envelope, and it was, a letter from Miss Indira Gandhi herself. And I think that moment, really taught me a lot. She also invited myself to come out to India, to visit her, and we were stopped over in England, and she was actually assassinated that night. And, fast forward many years later, when I was elected, I was speaking at a conference called Pravasi Bharatiya Divas in Delhi, and Modi ji, who is now our Prime Minister, was, in India, was the Chief Minister of Gujarat at that time. And he heard me speak, in Delhi at this conference and invited me to Gujarat. And when I went to Gujarat, I found out that it was myself and Dalai Lama that were invited as the chief guests and keynote speakers to speak with, I think there were like hundreds of thousands of all of these young girls and young students that were there. And I remember that moment because, when we take a look at India's economy, India as a country, 65% is less than 35. And I think that moment was very impactful for me because you are actually changing and inspiring and motivating a whole new generation, of young people
Right.
in the country that are not only the future of India, but the future of the world. So I have a very deep connection, with India. And most importantly, I'm very, very spiritual.
All right, since you talk about your India connection with regards to even spirituality, and you've also in the past mentioned how you've in fact been visiting temples, how you enjoy it, how strong your spiritual connect is with India. And so will you address the issue of vandalism and defacing of temples that we have seen in the recent past in Canada, including the BAPS temples?
Even the BAPS, Mandir, the Akshardham Mandir, I actually did the opening of that when I was first elected many years back. And so it holds a very special place in my heart. And, we are a country of peace, and we have so many people from all over the world. Canada is a place where you can practice your religion, your faith, and your beliefs, without having any of this. So I'm 100% against anyone ever being attacked, or any type of violence ever being committed, over any individual, any Canadian for their religious belief, their religious faith. And I can tell you as Prime Minister, I will have zero tolerance for that.
All right. It was a pleasure speaking to you, Ruby. We'll have to leave that conversation there, but I wish you the very best. Thank you for joining in on World 360. And that brings me to the end of this edition of World 360. Thank you so much for watching.